Hi, and welcome back to the Shane Plays Out of the Abyss Notes series. My intrepid party is continuing their adventures in the Whorlstone Tunnels under Gracklstugh, which have both um, the Grey Ghost, which is the Thieves Guild of Gracklstugh, which is the Grey Dwarf, the Duergar city in the Underdark that also has a lot of Darrow in it. And then there's the Whorlstone Tunnels also have mad Darrow cultists who are trying to bring Demogorgon into the mix. So they haven't run into the cultists yet, but they've been running into the Grey Ghosts uh, last episode, and again, I'm not sure if the obelisk. Yeah, I think it's the Grey Ghost with the obelisks. I could be wrong. I need to read back up on that. But anyway, I'll get to that more later. So last night we had a couple of interesting things happen from a dungeon master's perspective, not necessarily a story perspective. One, I had a couple of new players show up. So we run this game at a store, Imagine Games in Sherwood, Arkansas, Tuesday nights, and we because it's at a store and it's on behalf of the store. They don't charge a setting fee or a playing fee. They just do it and get people into the door, and then that helps business for the store, and it's kind of a win-win on both sides. Um, then we're pretty loose about people coming and going. Now we've had a couple points where like, okay, this is too much, but for the most part, it's worked really well. Um, and so last night, for the first time in a while, I just had a couple of surprise people show up. Now, one of the guys has played in my games before, and he's a brother of one of the other players who had been off to college. He's back from college for the summer, so boom, he's back. That's fine. And then another guy show up. I didn't know it was coming. That is just there, and I've met him around the store before, but he's never played, and I didn't even know he was interested in playing, but he showed up. So, if as a DM, especially in a situation like that, you have to be really um, flexible and kind of quick on your toes how I'm going to work these guys in, because you can just say, okay, you're there, or you could try to narratively figure out how to get them in. And what I did was I figured out a narrative to get them in to the story. And I mean, these guys were still working on their characters, like rolling dice and stuff. So I gave them probably a good 30 to 40 minutes of the session. They were working on their characters, and then I worked them in. The second thing that happened, and I'll go into more detail on this later, was that one of my characters, and it's the same player who's always doing this weird stuff, um, basically got himself killed. That would be his second character death in this adventure. His first one was when he charged an adult red dragon as a second level paladin. Um, and I gave him a chance to live, and he lived. But by the dice, he should have died, and I'll explain that more. But that would have been his second character death in a couple of months, and it's purely, in my opinion, just through dumb things he's doing. So, um, he says he's playing his character as his character would play. Fair enough if you want to keep going through characters like lawnmower through your characters, or go through and change your characters like you change your underwear. But I I went ahead and gave him a chance. I didn't, give him an automatic chance to live, but I did give him a chance to live. So I could have easily said, well, you're dead, but I think the point was still made how close this character came to dying, and we're all like, dude, really, you should have died. So, and I'll talk more about that. I guess my reasoning is, I don't know. I guess at any given time, it's up to the mood of the DM in some ways. Last night, I just, for whatever reason, I was like, I'll give him a chance to live. Um, and like I said, I'll go into that more later when we talk about the actual battle that occurred. Uh, so as far as the actual adventure, they they're still in the Whorlstone Tunnels, and last time they had the encounter with a water weird as they're going up the ramp kind of area that leads to Section 14 and 14A and all that. And that's where they ended up with Section 14 on the Whorlstone Tunnels map, where's the obelisk is and the dragon egg. And that's actually one of the main areas of the map for Whorlstone, one of the main encounters, and they just happened to go that way. You know, um, and they were doing some exploring. They were finding some of the little narrow side tunnels that you have to eat a pygmy wart to shrink. And they decided, because I said, guys, I'm not saying that they're not interesting, but I want to reinforce that they're they seem to be naturally occurring. It's not guaranteed that there's something interesting in there. So I wasn't telling them not to go in. I was just saying that there's um, some, I'm trying to think how to put it. I was trying to strike a line between dissuading them, but also giving them enough information to know that just because you see one of these side tunnels doesn't necessarily mean something interesting is going on, because it seems to be naturally occurring. And they actually last night they were like, yeah, we're tired of these little tunnels, and they didn't go through any of them. Now they didn't miss anything major. Um, they did miss one smaller encounter with one of the little side small tunnels, but another one just led um, kind of where they would have been going anyway, up around section 14. So anyway, so I just, I was, like I said, I kind of struggled with that. I didn't want them to think that, oh, it's a little side tunnel, so we're just going to shrink and there'll automatically be something interesting there. But at the same time, I want them to know, there's, like any dungeon crawl, there could be something interesting in there. So, but they just personally chose not to go that way. Now, um, between working in some new party members and the battle that happened at the end of the session, they didn't explore a whole lot. They explored a little bit, but they mainly, after a couple of, hey, which way do we want to go, and kind of exploring branches a little way, they almost ended up backtracking. There's kind of a loop above section 9, which is where 7 and 8, I think, where the fungi farm is and the alchemist layer. You can kind of go above that and circle all the way back around, and they almost ended up doing that, and kind of coming back to areas of the tunnels they'd been before, but they didn't. They're like, oh well, let's just go this way. So they ended up going up north towards section 14, um, and they come to a point where there's heavier amounts of fungus, and that fungus covers some doors. And if you bash through those doors, then you can go further down and into section 14 where the obelisk is, and also the red dragon egg. And there's a Darrow savant in there, and also a spectator, which they ran into. But before that, about this point, they were kind of like, like what's going on with this fungus, and they happened to start doing perception checks. And sure enough, behind the fungus, there's some doors that you need a perception check to find, and they found that. So I was glad I didn't kind of have to encourage them to look at that, or find a way to kind of encourage them to do perception checks. They did it on their own. And at this point, I introduced the 2 new players, which turned into just a Benny Hill routine, which I was so happy. I didn't plan for this to happen, but it happened. It's just those things as a DM that it just makes me happy when this kind of stuff happens. I'll go into that here in a second. I forgot to mention, last session, Melkor, the half-orc necromancer, was the only person, even though I dropped a couple of hints that there was a desk in the alchemist lab, was the only person that had searched it. And he had found some strips of parchment that had dwarven writing on them that are actually recipes to make, I think, like acid and that alchemist fire, I think. Well, he couldn't read them, and so last night, we were recapping. We always recap at the beginning of the adventure what happened, the previous session. And I dropped yet another hint. I was like, he was the only one that searched that desk, and they're just not picking up on the hint. And the desk isn't that important, but it's blowing me away that nobody's twinging on, that there's some more stuff they can find in the desk, and it's not absolutely critical to the story or anything like that. But they were just completely ignored the black lump of metal. Um, and then there's a secret letter they can find, and then there's also those scraps of parchment that only the half-orc necromancer knew anything about. So it's just, for whatever reason, it's just blowing my mind that they didn't look at that. But anyway, I mentioned the desk again. Nobody went, oh, we should I'm like, all right. But anyway, the necromancer's like, all right. So he did, he did go ahead and pull out the the straps and have people look at them. And the only person who could read Dwarven was Eldith, and she doesn't have arcane, so she couldn't make heads or tails of them because you have to make an intelligence arcane check to be able to read the recipes. So that happened. Okay, so anyway, back to how I had these guys meet. There's you kind of go up north, and then the doors, and then it's like the tunnel kind of ends, but then also there's another tunnel coming in from the west. And right there's a bunch of fungus covering up some doors that you can go through to go into the area with the obelisk. And what I had happen, they were searching and what do we do? And then I said, well, you hear down this tunnel, you hear some people approaching. And they're like, so they're trying to stealth. I'm like, you can't, there's no stealth here. It's little mushrooms. They're like, what do we do? So a couple of people are like getting ready with crossbows, and a couple other, there's just kind of various reactions to what to do. The blind rogue daggers went ahead and made a stealth check and rolled a 1. So he laid on top of some mushrooms and assumed he was hiding. Sure, why not? So anyway, and then there's a young elf female wizard that was introduced after the paladin got killed by the dragon, and she's like, so she was throwing I forget what it's called, fire roots or something like that. There's these fungus that can catch on fire, so she threw some down at the entrance to where they would be coming in from, and was ready to like light that on fire. And so they were all kind of ready. And then so then I went, okay, so then I went to the other two players and kind of gave them a quick backstory, because there's uh, other plot hooks that can get you into the Whorlstone Tunnels besides just the dragon sending you down there looking for the egg, and looking for evidence of the cult, or not the cult, but the gray ghost, the servants of the flame clerics that serve the dragon are convinced somehow the Thieves Guild is responsible for the disruptions in the material plane that they're sensing that are related to Demogorgon and all that, the demon lords. But for some reason they've gotten paranoid through madness and they think it's the Thieves Guild. So that's one of the plot hooks. Another one is the captain of the guard can send you looking for evidence of corruption and all this other stuff. So I just said, look, you guys were captured by the drow. You got away, right? It's almost like the standard wave the magic wand. You're in the Underdark because you got captured by the drow, but you got away. And so I had them on a separate quest working for the captain. And I just left it real kind of loose. I didn't fill it in super strong, but kind of give them a loose reason for being there. Now, here's the other interesting thing. There's 2 monks in the party. One of my main players plays a tiefling monk, and then one of my new players, his brother in real life, is also playing a monk. It's not a tiefling. It is a tiefling, but it's the variant that is sort of celestial. I can't remember, Asimar or something like that. That I can't remember off the top of my head. That anyway, they both know each other from being monks, and somehow they're looking for each other in their backstory. So against all odds, somehow they happen to find each other in the Underdark, not only in the Underdark, but in some secret tunnels underneath the city of Gracklstugh in the Underdark. So fate can be weird, my friends. I'm going to look up this tiefling variant that he's playing. And the other character is playing a barbarian dwarf. So it's kind of an interesting mix. I'll see if I can find this variant here. It's in the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide. Let me see if I can find this real quick. It's called like Asinar something. I should have looked it up before the video. I'm sorry, I didn't. But I actually asked, because it's such a coincidence for them to find each other. I actually asked what deity does your character worship? And the reason I asked that is because earlier we had established that the paladin who died worshipped Maestra, and the new character that was introduced after that also worshipped Maestra. So Maestra kind of engineered that. Hey, these sent dreams to the new character to find this group. So I was gonna kind of maybe introduce that. So if the character ends up worshiping Maestra, fictionally, of course, in the game, then Aasimar, yeah, that's it. The celestial opposites of the tieflings. Aasimar descended from humans of celestial heritage. Um, they're not as prevalent in the realms as tieflings, but common enough that some become adventurers. So I allowed it. Yeah, I basically said if it's in the player's handbook or the SCAG, then it's playable, in this campaign. So anyway, so they see each other, and um, I had the people that said they were kind of readied or whatever. I had everybody roll initiative, and just in case something went crazy. And um, so here's what. Well, actually, no. Let me back up. They saw each other, and so what do you do? And the celestial tiefling variant, the newcomer named Soon, went and yelled out in some language and charged the other tiefling monk. And so wow, I'm like, okay, everybody that, and I said, okay, you guys told me y'all were kind of readying this, so everybody roll initiative. So everybody that rolled initiative, I went into sending order, and it just so happened that the monk who was being charged had the highest initiative. So they had a chance to go, hey, no, everybody, I know this guy, but they didn't. They went, because they saw everybody freaking out, and they went, wait, stop. And then the charging tiefling monk hit him, and I said, what do you do? He said, well, I just hit him and put him into I just hit him and hug him, and I'm like, okay, so anybody who's watching this situation who doesn't know what's going on is going to assume that you're attacking this other monk. I mean, I think that's fair enough. That's why I went by initiative, to give somebody a chance to calm the situation down. So, long story short, as far as everybody could tell, the new tiefling variant monk slammed into the other monk, and they're wrestling around, even though it's like a joy thing. And of course, the half-orc necromancer who likes to burning hand his own party was the next to go, so he magic missiled the new celestial and did like 18 points of damage to him because he casted a second level slot. Um, and luckily, whoever was next in initiative order got things calmed down. And then the barbarian dwarf ran in, going, "Are we fighting? Are we fighting?" So everyone had fun with it. I felt bad that the guy got hurt. They did heal him. They gave him a healing potion and all that, but it was just too delicious of a moment as a DM because I'm like, I've got to present this because none of these people know each other except the two monks. And if you're in a dungeon and you hear people coming and you're ready to fight, and all of a sudden somebody goes, "No, no, no," and runs in and grapples one of your party members, what are you going to do? So it was a fun moment. Luckily, I mean, I was like, whoa, I was like, are you sure you want a magic missile? But I can't argue with the guy's motivations because as far as he knows, his party member is being attacked. And the guy who was quote unquote being attacked had the highest initiative and could be like, I know this guy. But the player just went, wait, stop. So all the other characters saw was, wait, stop, boom, and just, so it was on. But anyway, they simmered it down pretty quick. Uh, Healed up, made introductions, caught each other up, found the door, crashed through the door using strength and a crowbar. And so by the book, it says if they crash through the door, then they can't, like there's a spectator and a Darrow savant in um, the obelisk room that are alerted. I went ahead and ruled that wasn't the case. I just did DM's preference and said no, they didn't hear the crashing door. So I don't know, because it's barred on one side, so they broke through the bar and got through. And I don't know why I did. I could have easily had the spectator and the Darrow savant waiting for them, but I didn't. I just, for whatever reason. And as it turned out, it actually it had another delicious DM moment that I love so much. But anyway, long story short, they worked their way down to the opening that goes into the obelisk room. There was another little side small tunnel shooting off, they decided to ignore. All that would have done was let them back to an area they'd already been through. And so they see an opening. So the player who's already gotten himself killed and is always doing, in my opinion, boneheaded stunts. And like I said, they're welcome to do that. It's the D&D is a game of imagination, and you can play it how you want. But I can't help but be amused or sometimes go, I don't understand why you did that, but I'm gonna let you do it. Well, anyway, he decides I'm gonna go poke my head in. He's not a rogue. He's a half-elf female wizard. I don't know. He's like, I'm gonna go poke my head in. So he goes up there, and the barbarian dwarf's like, well, I guess I'll go with him and keep an eye on him. So he trundles up there with him. And then a little ways back, you had the tiefling monk, the one that's been in the party, and then you had everybody else about another 30 feet back. So by the book, when they look in, it says that you see the obelisk, and you kind of describe the room, and there's a couple of mesas in the room, kind of steppy kind of things, and then on one is an obelisk, and on another one is the dragon egg, and you see a derro at a derro savant. They don't know it's a savant; they just know it's a female derro at the obelisk, doing something, and there's like a flash of magic, and something appears, and she shouts with glee. Um, so I described all that. Uh, And it says in the book that, if you go 15 feet in, then, the spectator attacks and all this stuff. Well, when I described all that, the character who, keep in mind, has already gotten themselves killed, or the player who's already gotten themselves killed by charging an adult red dragon at second level, said, well, okay, I'll walk in and say hello. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I can't tell them they can't do that, but I'm like, so talking to them after the game, and they were like, well, I thought you said squeal with glee. That's all I heard. And so it just sounded kind of friendly. And I went, okay. I read the description to them again because they were kind of implying that I didn't read all the other stuff. And then I was like, no, I did. And I kind of read it again. But anyway, so they walked in and said, hello. So I said, roll initiative. So the barbarian dwarf and the female elf wizard who walked in and said, hello, and the Darrow savant and the spectator all rolled initiative. Well, the Darrow savant rolled around and lightning bolted the female. She started, because it's in the book, it says she just starts shouting obscenities, kill them, kill them, kill them. She's like, kill them all, boom, lightning bolt. So lightning bolt hits by the line. We actually pulled out a ruler on the map and everything because it goes in 100 feet. It hit her, and it hit the tiefling monk that was about 15, 20 feet behind. Now, they said, well, she's up higher, so will that go 100 feet? I said, okay, I'll go 50 feet. And because it only went 50 feet, it missed some of the party members that were behind. But if it would have gone in a straight line, it would have gotten some more party members. So by the halfling, or not the halfling, the elf, female elf that said hello, failed her dexterity save, took full damage, and by the rules should be dead. Took like 30 something points of damage, and had evidently only had 8 hit points at that point. And we were all like, why didn't you get yourself healed or whatever? She's like, well, I gave my healing potion to the monk who we magic missiled them. Okay. But, it's like there's a cleric in the party. But anyway, so, because if she would have been at full hit points, it wouldn't have killed her. But since she was at 8 hit points and she can't go more than negative, you can't, like, if you normally have 20 hit points max, you can't go more than negative 20 hit points or you're dead. And the way it all worked out, she was dead. So I said, okay. So I kind of had mercy, and I said, you're down with 2 failed death saving throws. And I've done that one other time in the game. Like, if I think somebody kind of deserves a chance, even though she really didn't deserve a chance, but I just didn't feel like killing a character last night, and she's already, the player, he has already lost one of their character. Even though she did it, or he did it to himself, I just went ahead and had mercy. I said, you're down with 2 failed saving throws. Well, the way it all worked out on the next initiative round, when everybody got in, they got some healing on her and saved the character. But the way the initiative worked out, it may not have gone that way. She may have had to do a death saving throw and failed it and died. So there was still a chance that the character could die. Anyway, long story short, they fight and defeat the Darrow savant, and the spectator, and that's where we had to wrap. It was a good fight. Um, it was actually a really good fight. And there's one of my guys who's a younger, he's like 11 or 12, maybe 13. He always has to leave early because the dad comes picks him up. So a lot of times he misses out on the final parts of the final fights or whatever. So I said, hey, he's like, oh, I got to go. So I moved him up. I just moved his character into the room. He wasn't in the room yet. Out of initiative order, said take an action, because you never get to sometimes participate in the fights. And he's like, all right. So he actually blasted the spectator and did pretty good. So he felt good about that. And I said, all right, cool, good job. So I wanted to make sure he felt included. Because if I was his age, I'd hate that, I always had to leave before everything wrapped up. Anyway, long story short, they fought the spectator and the Darrow. And the Darrow savant, actually, between lightning bolts and all the other spells and stuff she's got, can kick a little booty, and she's got like 49 hit points, so she's no joke. And she casts as a 5th level spellcaster, and then of course the spectator can do some damage. It's not a beholder, but it can still do some damage. So it was a good fight, and we had to end it right there. So they haven't explored, they haven't checked out the obelisk, they haven't checked out the dragon egg and all the stuff. It's other stuff. And one of my players has been talking about this dragon egg since they first found out about it. So they're all like, "Oh, the dragon egg is here." When I said, on that thing there's a red, egg, and they're, oh, dragon egg. They have it in their mind that they're going to raise a baby dragon. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Also, I got some feedback on the last video that, the character who keeps getting them, or the player keeps getting themselves killed, doing strange things, always wanting to do something. I want to play an angelic winged elf that says it's so rare it's considered mythical, and it's just always something with this guy. Um, I had asked, he had said he wants to invent his own spells. So I asked about that, and I got good feedback on the last comment, or on the last video. I appreciate that comment that basically said, you could let him do it, but introduce wild magic into that. And I said, okay. I thought that was a pretty good response, so I appreciate that. And I told the player, if you find a wizard that's higher enough level than you to be considered a mentor down here, or if you find a magical library study, then I'll let you take a crack at that. So what I'm going to let them do is kind of play around with spells, but there's going to be a decent chance of wild magic, especially now that they're in the Underdark and things are going crazy and the Fair's Rest and all that. So I think that's everything I know to mention. That they didn't take a long rest or a short rest. The pursuit level didn't go up. They're still at 5, I think. The pursuit level went up the previous session. Ilvara is just about caught up to them, which will probably happen when they get back to the inn in the Dark Lake District. I'll probably go ahead and play that out. But the pursuit level didn't go up on this session. But there's still a lot of the Whorlstone Tunnels to explore. They're like, well, we've seen the whole Thieves Guild. And I said, I don't know if you've seen the whole Thieves Guild or not, but I'll say that you haven't explored all the tunnels, because there's still Bupitos down there, and they never ran into Droki. I don't know if they're going to find Droki at this point because they took a long rest. He's kind of gotten them into the tunnels, which is the main point. And then there's the Darrow cult. The cultists, there's all kinds of stuff still going on in the Whorlstone Tunnels. And one of my players is like, man, I'm tired of being in these tunnels, so I don't know what they're going to do. But I think he's kind of feeling that claustrophobic Underdark feeling that used to be the feeling of the Underdark everywhere, but now it's a little bit different because they've kind of retooled the Underdark where there's natural light and big open areas and beauty and all these things. So anyway, that's it for this week. Thanks so much for listening. Appreciate your comments. Please make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. In addition to this kind of content, I have Let's Plays for video games, and my geeky radio show gets posted here after it goes out live on the radio. This past weekend was Captain America and Captain America trivia and all that stuff. And I do a lot of D&D and RPG related content. I've got some GURPS related content coming. So subscribe to the channel. Do me a favor, leave a thumbs up on this video and maybe a comment. It helps me a lot. So anyway, I really appreciate you watching, and we will catch you next time on Shane Plays Out of the Abyss Notes.